So when buying a used skid steer, I've come to realize these Sperry or John Deere, because Sperry New Holland made them for John Deere. The 675 and the 575. This is the 455, and I also have a 555 outside. When they made these, right, they were just ridiculously overbuilt. Extremely easy to service and just phenomenal machines overall. They have their quirks though. So I don't think they're bad, but one thing that really sung to me was I needed something that was stable in the snow. And you can get the 555 rims and tires for the 455. And that's fantastic because I have like a 17 grade icy, screwy driveway for 500 feet. And this thing gets it done. Totally stable. As a matter of fact, this vertical lift system is not just stable. With counterweights, I actually just use lifting plates and some, axles that I've mounted on the original weight pack mount area. Now, with that, I am lifting 1,700 pounds, which is 100 under breakout without even, moving. Like with these super wide tires, I actually pulled the ones from the 555 to test, right? Because those are new snow tires, like just absolutely stable. And the reason being is I have machine tools, right? So other than that, right, I think the biggest thing that I love about this machine is access. Here's the engine bay, again with the cover off. This engine practically just lifts out. There's so little hardware in the way. And in order to release it, all you have to do is drop the fuel tank. So this is a 10-minute procedure with a motorcycle jack. You literally undo a few bolts, 2 clips, tank comes right out as long as you release all of the fuel lines and the pump wires. But it's pretty awesome in here. Like you also have direct access to the 2 pumps that feed the drive motors. So come down here, the drive motors are also insanely accessible. Like they really thought about this. Even your auxiliary hydraulics, if you have that option on these machines, which I highly recommend, it's right here. Everything's accessible. And even your steering dampers, like they managed to get everything right at the top of the machine. And there's very little you need to remove the fuel tank for other than getting to the bell housing to release the knuckle between the engine and here. So pretty fantastic. Even the axes, right, for the boom hydraulics and whatnot. I'm in the middle of reorganizing it, but they come right off. Only thing to consider in terms of high maintenance would be the wheel seals, which I'll get to in a moment. But another real cool thing about this design, this one is lubrication free. Hard to demonstrate, but I can't, even when it's in the air. I know this is a poor demonstration because it has the pads right sitting on the axle. It doesn't move. You shake the machine, right? This has 2,600 hours. The L455 outside has 3,700 hours. Just incredibly rigid. Phenomenal design. And also to attribute to that, I guess, would be the quick attach system. Now you can weld on the modern, Bobcat inspired one. I hate it because you get play in the system. This one snugs things down into this apron, and in doing so, there's no room for play. Like this bucket is so solidly attached, it's a part of the machine. I know you can get higher quality stuff, but this just works really well. So on to that caveat, these axles and seals share lubrication with the hydraulic system. So you're going to notice the dipstick leads right into that same case. So here's an axis for a sprocket, another sprocket for the drive. You can just barely see one down there, and there's one down there. So whenever you have to do a service, you have to drain the hydraulic fluid for these wheel seals, so you do them all at once if you do them at all. You can tilt the machine and do one side at a time, but that's not my preference because it's just so much easier when you have it up on blocks to get it done. So really you have an outer dust seal, you have an inner oil seal, and you have a grease zerk here. So the dust seal, you pressurize against the axle with grease, and in doing so, no dirt gets in, and those oil seals will outlive the machine, right? but without doing it, you only get about 1,500 hours. So major consideration there. That's just the central sprocket axis, right? But coming around to this side of the machine, I have the fuel cap. It's another consideration with these. Just check, because you need a vacuum. A no start condition with these, right? Usually these are pretty nasty condition if somebody did something silly, and you just want to clean those up, make sure that the rubber gasket's good, check the fuel tank for non-OEM or cracked lines, and also see, usually the pump fails on these older ones, the lift pump, right? And you might see an inline. Just make sure that's all in good condition, because that's part of the priming issues you might find on these machines before it gets the actual mechanical pump. So really not a lot. And by the way, usually you're going to see some kludged, system down there for the auxiliary. It's because whoever did this actually stole solenoids off of a different machine and put it in here and did an okay job, just could have done way better. But so coming over to the manual, the one thing to note is the biggest investment to people who don't know better is the sprockets. So buy a machine at 2,000 or less hours unless you're willing to consider sprockets, because you do have an access to check these, right? A good indicator is, really you want to get into the central case, because the 50H chain in the middle that goes to the drive motor, that's the one that's going to show the most wear. But there is an axis down there. You can see there are bolts on that panel. That panel lifts up, right, where that package is sitting. That panel comes out, and you can peek at least the rear without changing the oil. And if those show wear substantially, you're going to have to do a service on the sprockets if you're willing to put more than 500 hours on the machine, right, doing whatever you're doing. Because if it hasn't failed yet, if they're in rough condition, they're going to fail. And so the sprockets look like this, and you're going to see there's an inner spline in there, and believe it or not, it's just welded on. You can actually buy weld-on sprockets for these, for the whole machine. Every single sprocket, it's like $500, and like I've replaced all the sprockets on a machine for about 600 before. It's not too bad, but that being considered, right, like you either need to have a mill and a lathe, right, or no machinist that's going to treat you fair, right, to get that done. Because otherwise, buying from a dealer, you're going to spend $3,000 getting OEM parts probably. But one thing to note is you can actually get the chain, the 60H chain, for like $13 from the dealer, which is ridiculous. So definitely invest in a new chain. One thing to note with this is when you pull this dipstick here, if there's white milky junk on it, you got forbidden milkshake in the bottom of your skid steer. And it's going to be worse on this side because you have a cross tube, right? And oil and water, they obviously don't mix. So because of that, you're going to want to make sure that the chain on this side is not seized up, eating up your sprockets, if you notice that there was a water issue. So this side is very important because, again, just by the nature of water and oil, you're not going to get as much water across the other side. And you're going to see this is usually missing. This is part of a breather assembly. Now, I modified it. So this allows the hydraulic system to breathe. I put a poppet with a small hole in the middle for easy relief one way, but not the other. But at least it can relieve in both directions, and it's going to minimize water ingress. And I put fabric over it, right, the felt to kind of help it keep junk from getting in the hydraulic system. Because again, the chain cases aren't necessarily pressurized, they're just feeding the hydraulic system, right? And another thing to check, you got your, there's a screen in there. It's kind of like a last ditch effort screen. It's got a magnet and it's got a filter. Some machines you're gonna find that's absolutely looking like it's the end of the world and the machine still functions great. So as long as that filter is in good condition, it's gonna save your pump. So if you're gonna change any filter on this machine, you better invest in the OEM. Like, it's $100, it's worth it, because that will save your pump from grenading if something goes wrong somewhere, especially if you have a sprocket issue, right? Because again, it's all shared. So don't skimp on that. And one thing you might notice, you got these bushings here, these rubber bushings. Sometimes when one of these dampers fails, you're going to find that it's going to have destroyed one of the rubber bushings, squished it out. If the damper has failed, you can actually find the damper part number. I think it's a Spanish company. It's $60, but you have to buy the assembly for $300 if you don't want to. You actually have to, from what I've experienced, is literally cut the welds. They're not a lot of welds to cut. Got to cut them and then insert a new one into this assembly tube here, right? And once you do that, like, you're good. It's a $60 repair to replace these dampers. But when these dampers are seized up, replace them, because if you don't, they're going to destroy all those rubber grommets, right? They're just going to squish out. So don't forget those. So just to go and see what happens when these wheel seals fail, I'll show the 555. So this is probably one of my favorite skid steers for a simple reason. It's only 40 horsepower, but that's the minimum requirement to put Zyreus tracks on a skid. Zyreus aren't like over the tire, they're actually tracks, right? And with that, you can convert this into a track machine. And this thing will do its breakout force and lifting capacity. So, like, let's imagine, like, I think it's something crazy like 2,600 pounds, right? But this is what a failed wheel seal looks like. Again, this machine looks very similar. It's the 555, but it's a slight upgrade. And the way, again, you can at least stave that is rotate the wheel while pumping hydraulic grease into it, right? It'll keep it from leaking too much more. You can see just how much fluid was leaking before I pumped it up. Pretty bad. But this thing, it cranked and it built pressure, and I bought it for $1,500. And that's fantastic, right? I'm going to be able to make it a working machine for $500 more, $2,000 for a functional skid steer, and it has insane specifications on it. And the thing, again, is in fantastic condition. It was winterized, so these are very cheap, very affordable. Only thing to caveat is you cannot invest more than $7,000 in one of these machines, because realistically you're going to sell it for $8,000 at most in perfect condition. So these are machines you buy if you need them, or you're going to put them to work, right, and make money with them. Like this one, just because I went down the rabbit hole, right, unlike the machines I do for others, and it cost me about $7,000, right? But this machine's perfect. Like, it will outlive me. It's an heirloom, right? So fantastic machine. It'll keep running. But again, they do have a limit on how much you should invest in them. So if you're going to go and check one of these machines, those are all the things to consider. But most importantly, right, you come in here and you check the hour meter, right? So if your hour meter is too high, right? By that I mean if it's above, let's say 2,000, 2,500, you're going to be resigned to probably needing sprockets. Now, some people get up to 5,000 hours. But I showed you all the conditions it can lead to them wearing, and it's bound to have had one of those failures, right? So just keep in mind, right, limit on these machines, probably if you're buying them in poor condition, is, I'd say, $4,000 or $5,000. $5,000 tops, right? And don't invest more than $2,000 in them. And you can get them working for $500 is usually the average. And again, cool hardware, right? You buy the smaller one, you get a machine that only weighs 3,300 pounds, right? With excellent snow tires, for example. This thing will handle 17 grade, crazy driveways, no problem. Like, that's the benefit of this kind of machine. Plus, it'll be your forklift, right, with that counterweight system I mentioned. And the 555 has the benefit of conversion to a really great tracked machine, right? Which it'll have unparalleled lifting capacity and a vertical lift system, right, where, again, this system just goes straight up in the air. It doesn't rotate the bucket, or wave or anything. It just goes exactly as you want it. So it's great for tight clearance. And not only that, again, super easy to maintain. Like, what I showed you is practically the extent of your knowledge needed to run one of these machines forever.